segment is sponsored by Our Home Magazine.
She's featured this month in the current issue of Our Home Magazine. We're talking heirloom roses with Lisa Caperton. I'm so excited to have you with us today, Lisa. This is going to be fun.
This is going to be fun. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I had to choose my words carefully because I know that in rose circles, there are distinctions, and it's a very distinct flower to put into your mix outside. I love talking with you as we got started. You're a passionate amateur antique rose enthusiast. Okay, now what does all that mean?
What that means is I love old roses. I love antique flowers. I've always lived in old houses. And I was drawn to them because I'm an organic gardener. So I did a lot of research. I wanted to grow roses, but I didn't want to spray and and I'm busy. And I just fell in love with the old roses. I started with apothecary rose, things from the 13th century on up into the 19th century. And they're different because most of my roses bloom once a year. And that works for me because I don't have to spray them and do things to them. They're beautiful in the spring, like when we feel like England. And then I just cut them back and forget about them until the next year. So works for me.
Well, so many people who like to spend time out in the garden are on that same journey, right? They love, for the most part, plants that are low maintenance. But when I think of roses, I don't think of low maintenance. So is that part of the beauty of this heirloom and looking back to these varieties that have existed for so long?
It is, because they haven't been bred together to create new things that perform like a show pony, that, bloom all year long. They lose things along the way, like their fragrance and their disease resistance. And for me, Richmond, Virginia just isn't England. Roses don't love this humidity and heat. So in the summer, when everything's feeling tired, but the daylilies are happy, I think the roses can just kind of rest and build up for the next year. And I don't have to get into a spray schedule and black spot and the whole thing. I just cut them back. And then they perform every year beautifully for me. And I love that because I feel like in the spring, you don't ask your peonies to bloom throughout the year, and you don't ask your other pretty spring flowers. So I kind of appreciate my roses in a cottage garden in a mixed border.
Well, so considering all of that and thinking about this as an antique or heirloom, and am I using that correctly? Are they interchangeable, or do you have an heirloom and an antique?
They're interchangeable. When you get into showing roses, you'll find that certain roses to be considered an OGR, old garden rose, have to be, in propagation or development before 1860 something. I don't have it in front of me. So, but we interchange antique and heirloom.
So that's okay.
The official term in the rose competition world is OGR, Old Garden Rose. So when I do competitions, all of mine are usually OGRs.
So if you started this rose journey, Lisa, and you went from maybe putting that first one into the ground to now showing the OGRs, then everything in between, what are some of the successes and what are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way?
The successes are that my husband really calls them weeds. Really and truly, you shouldn't be afraid of roses. And the successes are that if you give them a good start, you give them enough sun, you give them good organic matter, and you make a good beginning for them, that they're going to reward you with fragrance and beauty that looks like the old paintings, the old French paintings. So it's just, they're nostalgic and romantic, and they're really pretty carefree. Right now, my roses, all of my once bloomers, they're dormant. They've got leaves, but their leaves look really good because they're from the beginning. So they can put up with this stuff, but because they're not trying to bloom. But in fact, I've got a couple little roses. So, right now, there's not much in my garden. But look at my foliage, and I don't spray it. I don't do anything to it. In the summer, your roses, these are David Austin's. I'll get to that in a second. After your beginning once bloomers, if you want to continue that feeling of antiques, go for the David Austins. They look like the old roses. But this time of year, they're all struggling a little bit. So It's okay.
Well, Richmond weather, as you pass that rose season, does get a little rough. Lisa, we're out of time, but if you had to make your top 3 picks for Heirloom, maybe that were super accessible here, could you share those with us?
Yes, I think everybody should grow Rosamundi because it's a conversation piece. It's a Gallica. It's a striped pink and white rose. It goes back to the days of the Lancaster and York, the Rose Wars. That's a great one. Mutabilis is a China rose, and that one actually does repeat bloom. It's only got 5 petals, but it changes colors on the bush. You'll have roses that are peach, pink, yellow. They're pretty cool. And well, it's so hard to pick. I love Paul Néron because it has a giant bloom. I think that one was featured in the illustration in our home. But go to the Richmond Rose Society website and get started and grow roses in Richmond. I would say join that little society and you can learn everything you want to learn. Or call me. I don't know.
We will. And you've been a great resource. Lisa, it's been a joy talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you. And happy gardening.
Happy gardening. And that rose journey, you can do it too. Just find the support. We'll be sure to share all the information. Thanks again, Lisa. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Had fun. Thank you.
Our pleasure. And we will be sure to include a link on our website, WTVR.com/VTM, to the Richmond Rose Society so you can learn more.
Find Our Home Magazine on newsstands today or subscribe at richmondmagazine.com/home. You'll find them on Facebook. Facebook, I'll get this right, DOR.com/Our Home Magazine, and on Instagram at Our Home Mag. I don't know why I was having so much trouble with that. Stick around. More Virginia This Morning coming up next.